So, first of all, my pranams to all of you, every single one of you who are here, and very, very happy to meet you in this platform online. So, before I begin, I want to acknowledge that the seeds of yoga, the seeds of pranayama was put in me by none other than my beloved Daseta. So I thought before we begin the talk on pranayama and what it can do to us physically, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, and maybe beyond, I want to begin in a very brief way, touch upon the background of yoga, pranayama. I'm sure, because most of you are interested in all these things, I'm sure you must have heard about, maybe read, known Maharshi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? So Maharshi Patanjali, the great Maharshi Patanjali, easily 2,500 to 3,000 years plus ago, very easily. So this great being came from another world to planet Earth, took a human body here, and like Adi Shankara, began his teaching of yoga and, the deeper aspects of yoga to humanity. That's how we got yoga. In fact, even today, he's called the father of yoga, right? Of course, the original father and founder is Lord Shiva, because yoga came from him. But Patanjali is credited with, collecting all the knowledge and understanding about yoga and bringing that into a single book called Yoga Sutras. So, briefly, we will touch upon what is this yoga all about. Unfortunately, the word yoga, at least in the Western world, right, for some years now, yoga is associated with physical postures, asanas, primarily with asanas. The more number of asanas you know, the more asanas you can practice, you are supposed to be called a yogi, which in a way is unfortunate, because yoga is not just asanas. Yoga has very little to do with physical postures. I'll tell you why in a while. So let's begin there, talk a little bit about what Maharshi Patanjali and all the great sages and rishis and yogis of India meant by yoga. We will go into that a little bit and then come to our topic of the day. So yoga, I will take, some material from the great Yoga Sutras itself, because we have begun there. The first sutra of the Yoga Sutras, the first verse, it's very interesting. I often, whenever I talk about this, I always begin there, because it's so interesting. Maharshi Patanjali begins, Ata Yoganushasanam. Ata Yoganushasanam. Yoga Sutras, if you look at the book itself, 4 chapters, 195 sutras. That's all. Very crisp. I mean, Maharshi Patanjali does not beat around the bush. Straight. And there can be anybody who reads Yoga Sutras with a little bit of understanding, they can never be a dilemma, because the words are used in such a way that the meaning is direct. There can be only one meaning. So Patanjali is very, very clear. Of course, great Maharshi. So, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. What does that mean? Atha, now, let us begin the practice or discipline of yoga. Now, look at the words. Now, let's begin, which means the student or the students were already prepared, ready for this moment. Now let's begin the practice or discipline of yoga, which means you're already prepared, you're ready. You know, in India, there is a lovely saying, when the student is ready, the master appears. Right? It's a beautiful statement. When the student is ready, the master comes. Not necessarily in the human form, could be any form. As long as you are able to recognize that, good enough. You can add one more sentence to this great saying. When the student ready, master appears. When the student is absolutely ready, the master disappears. Very, very beautiful. You know, I don't know how many of you have, if I can mention this as an example, how many of you have seen this Hollywood movie, The Peaceful Warrior? I sincerely urge all of you to, it's there in the YouTube, The Peaceful Warrior. That's exactly what happens. When the student is ready, the master comes from somewhere. And when the student becomes perfect, right, perfectly ready, he goes in search of his master, but the master is nowhere there. He has disappeared. So, Patanjali, Atha Yoganushāsanam. Now let us begin the practice or discipline of yoga, which means so much of preparation has gone through. And in the second verse itself, the great Maharshi Patanjali defines what yoga is really. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. That's all. 3-4 words. What is yoga? Chitta vritti nirodha. Chittam, the totality of mind, what we call in the English language, mind, the totality of the mind, emotions, thinking, memory, all that put together. Chitta vritti, vritti, the movements of the mind as thinking, the thinking pattern. Nirodha, suspend or come to an end. So how do you translate this? What is yoga? That state where thoughts are not active anymore. That doesn't mean you're sleeping. That doesn't mean you're in a dull state. It's one of the most alert, receptive state of the human mind. Awareness. Bodham, we say. Aham bodham. Self-awareness. So, in short, what is yoga? Stillness of the mind. The beauty is, you can't practice to make the mind quiet, because who is the one to practice stillness of the mind? The very one who is practicing is part of that state of the mind. Therefore, it is simply stillness, silence of the mind. It comes, it happens. That is yoga. I'll take one more definition from the great Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan Krishna says, what is yoga? 2 words. Karmasu kaushalam. What is karma? Action. Kaushalam, excellence in action. Now, the reason why I'm taking these two definitions, one from Yoga Sutras, stillness of the mind, silence of the mind, and excellence in action. They are two sides of the same coin. Your actions can never be excellent. Let me use another word, perfection, unless the mind is absolutely silent. Both go together. When the mind becomes silent, naturally, every single action of yours becomes excellent. Not excellent, excellence itself. There is no division. This is insignificant work, that is very important work. No, every single work. If you look at the lives of great rishis and yogis and sages of India, for example, I can bring one of my favorite gurus, Daseta knows, Bhagavan Sri Ramana. If you look at his life, every single action was so perfect, appropriate, there is no residue left. You don't go back to the action and say, my God, I could have done this way, I could have done that way. So, silence of the mind, chitta vritti nirodha, and karmasu kaushalam, they go together. Now, how do you come to that state? There's no way you can practice. This is not a practice. You can't practice. Every day I practice something, and one day, one moment, I will make my mind silent. I will make my mind quiet. No, it doesn't happen. That is not the way. Through self-awareness, through aham bodham, through watching, through observation of one's own self and the mind and its activities, the mind becomes naturally quiet. And then something like that can happen. So right in the beginning, one has to understand that yoga, other than asanas and kriyas and pranayama, it is not a practice in the strict sense of the word. It's not a practice. It's a state of being. Yoga is a state of being. Yoga is self-realization. The very origin of yoga, 15, 20,000 years ago, in this great country called Bharatavarsha, we don't know the exact origin, where exactly it started. Nobody knows. We can guess, maybe so many thousands of years ago. It all began, the entire Bharatiya Samskara is founded on spirituality. What is spirituality? To know, to understand, to realize who you really are and what is this universe all about. That's yoga, that is spirituality. Right? So again, going back to Yoga Sutras, just to take one or 2 points before we come to pranayama, there is something called Ashtanga Yoga in Yoga Sutras. Ashtanga Yoga. 8 components or limbs of yoga. They are not steps. Please be clear. Ashtanga Yoga, they are not steps. They are components, various aspects of yoga. 8 components, 8 limbs of yoga. Maharshi Patanjali. Yama, I'll just mention this. Many of you know this already. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the 8 components. Now, what are these Yama, Niyama? Yama, certain social observances. Like you have to speak the truth, ahimsa, all that. I won't go into that now because our topic is different. Niyama, certain personal observances like cleanliness, contentment, and so on and so forth. Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to the whatever name you want to call that, God, supreme consciousness, oneness, life, universe, doesn't matter the name, Brahman, Atman, doesn't matter. When you really observe yourself, others, and the world, over a period of time, we will come to understand that you and I, we are not doing anything. Things are done through us by some force, energy, supreme intelligence, whatever name you want to give. So, Yama Niyama. Patanjali gives the third component as asanam. Before we begin pranayama, there comes asanam. Now, what is asana? Again, Patanjali's definition, 2-3 words. Stiram, Sukham, Asanam. That's all. Stiram, stable. Sukham, comfort. That posture which is stable, at the same time comfortable, is an asanam. That is the first qualification, requirement before we begin pranayama as a practice. Now, Maharshi Patanjali does not talk about the other different asanas in Yoga Sutras. As far as Maharshi Patanjali is concerned, for him, asana means stiram, sukham, asanam. That posture which is stable and comfortable is an asana. That is all Maharshi Patanjali talks about asana. So what have you to say for the other asanas? Sirsha asana, Sarvanga asana, Halasana, there are hundreds and hundreds of these asanas. So where do they come in? All the other asanas, the complicated ones, are later evolutionary aspects of yoga, right? So yogic exercise you can call. But then Maharshi Patanjali strictly says, this is asanam, stiram sukham asana. Before you even begin to understand what pranayama is all about, establish the posture. Now, how does one get into that posture? You have to take a posture seated, preferably seated posture, stable, comfortable, but to remain in that posture with stability and comfort for a period of time, it is not easy. Not easy at all. Most of us, suppose I ask you, how many of us can we sit in a posture, on the chair, on the floor, just sitting, right? Sit absolutely quietly without doing anything for a stretch of time. Not a single physical movement. Of course, the breathing will go on. We're not talking about that. But physically, outwardly, you're not moving any part of your body. Absolutely quiet. You're not tight. You're not holding. You're not exerting. Naturally, in a relaxed way. Absolutely quiet, stable, at the same time comfortable, because after every 2 minutes you should not move your leg and arms and scratch here and there. No, stable and comfortable. So even to come to that state of stability and comfort, your body must be healthy, right? Relatively, we are there is no such thing as 100% health for the human body. No, that except maybe advanced yogis, even there I'm doubtful. Maybe 99% they have come to that state. But most of us, no, there's no way, there's no such thing as perfect health. So relatively speaking, good health, suppleness of the body, little amount of flexibility of the limbs and so on, especially the spine. And then when you have got that, the flexibility and suppleness, then when you take a posture and sit, it will be stable, it will be comfortable. Right? So see the connection where it begins. So even before you begin pranayama and maybe the other levels, this is the beginning. The first level of practice is this: stabilize the body, stabilize the prana, the breath, the posture. That is where the other asanas and stretching movements and vinyasa kramas and all those things come. So let's say at this age, we are interested, all of us are interested in beginning some basic practices of yoga. Where do you begin? Let's say all of us are interested in doing some pranayama every day, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, every morning, let's say, or every evening, we want to do. We have the desire. Where do you begin? Don't straight away begin with pranayama. Until unless you have done some basic asanas and stretches and your body is little supple and flexible, don't begin pranayama. Pranayama comes later. So some simple stretches, movements, what we call vinyasa kramas, some simple stretching movements. We do that for some time, maybe a couple of weeks or so. Pick up a few asanas which will make our body supple and flexible. We are not going to make the body like a circus performer. No, that's not necessary at all. In fact, there are hundreds and hundreds of asanas. If you take a book, for example, there's a book on Light on Yoga by B.K. Iyengar. If you pick up books like that, if the very posture, the pictures of the asanas, the very way you look, it's so difficult, complicated. So, and doing all that, where is the time? So, to make the body stable, supple, flexible, comfortable, some few stretches, maybe you could use a word like warming up, kind of make the body ready. So once you have done that, take some time, few weeks or so, and then you begin pranayama after establishing the posture. Remember, what is posture? Stiram and Sukham. Then we begin pranayama. Now, we come to the topic. Pranayama and wellness. How does one even begin pranayama? Even before you actually begin practicing pranayama, how do you understand this? Many people all over the world, they the moment you use the word pranayama, they think it is breath control, controlling your breathing. Absolutely not. Pranayama is not control of the breath. But that's how people have understood. Therefore, one has to make it very, very clear. What is pranayama? Prana plus ayama. Even Maharshi Patanjali has made it clear. He doesn't go into all the complexities of pranayama. He has made it very, very simple. Right? Prana plus ayama. What is prana? Prana is not the breath, not the visible, the outward breath that we know that goes in and comes out. That's the gross form of prana. Prana is that which moves the breathing and that which moves thinking. Prana is the single source from which thinking originates and breathing, the physical breathing, originates. Right? So prana ayama. Now coming to the gross aspect of prana, ayama, to stretch, to lengthen, to regulate. Regulate what? The external, the gross aspect of prana, which is breathing. The breathing that we, which is physical, is the outermost gross form of prana. In fact, if you look, everything is prana. Everything about the body and beyond is prana. It's because of prana, the sun is shining there. It's because of prana, all the stars are glittering there. It's because of prana, our body is functioning. It's because of prana, you have a hunger. You're able to breathe. You're able to blink. Everything. It's prana. That's why, the ancient masters say when the prana leaves the body, that's when the final ending of the physical, not you and not me, but the ending of the physical instrument happens. So, from that perspective, what is pranayama for all of us in a very practical sense? Right? Having established posture, asanam, we come to pranayama. Pranayama is the next as limb of yoga after asanam. Asana is always first, remember. Without a stable, comfortable posture, pranayama cannot be done. Even if done, even if you do it, not advisable. Because remember I told you that my story, before I even began physical, flexibility, suppleness and physical health, I just one fine day, I was so inspired by Daseta teaching me pranayama. I just took it up. I didn't know you have to be ready. You have to prepare. And that, the force of pranayama, what I did, hit me like anything. Because physical body was not ready. So that's why all these preparations. Now, coming to our topic, pranayama and wellness. Where do you begin pranayama? Let's say all of us we want to do pranayama in our own little way. Right? So simple movements and stretches, you stabilize the body and then begin pranayama. Now, there are various, practically speaking, physically speaking, there are various types of pranayama. Right? To translate what exactly is pranayama in English, regulation of breath. The closest you can come in meaning is regulation of breath. Right? To make the breath smooth and long and regular. Why? Why did the yogis, our ancient yogis, stress on that? Because the breath and mind, thinking, are very, very closely related. I told you, both these originate from the same single source, prana. So when the mind is upset, agitated, it immediately reflects on the breath. We know all this, right? Suppose when you're angry, your breath is very erratic, right? When you're anxious, worried, depressed, or even forget about mind, physically your body is not well. You can see that reflects in the breath, in the breathing, very clearly. In fact, if you look at our ancient shastras, there is something called Swara Yoga. Swara, not music. Swara Yoga here means signs of breathing. Our yogis have gone so deep into everything, including prana. And Swara Yoga is all about breathing, nostril dominance. If you look, for example, I'll just give you a simple, thing. Maybe many of you know this. Every now and then, keep your fingers below the nose and breathe in and out. You can see, you will immediately feel, you'll observe that the breath is more through one nostril, less through the other. Could be left or could be right. And this nostril, we call it nostril dominance. Which nostril is active in a given moment? So this nostril, suppose, let's say, example, we begin at 6 o'clock in the morning. We check up, the right nostril is dominant, left is slightly blocked. In a healthy human body, every 1.5, approximately, depends on each body, approximately 1.5 to 2 hours, this nostril dominance changes. For example, 6 o'clock we observed that the right nostril was fully open, left was partially closed. After 2 hours, roughly, left will be fully open, right will be partially blocked. That's how it goes. That's the natural functioning of the human body. And what our yogis do? They will watch the nostril dominance, and suppose they are going for an errand, work, they will check the breath. Which side is the breath? Right side is fully open, they will begin their work. Left side is open fully, they will wait. In fact, I'm sure all of you must have seen the picture of Lord Shiva, Bhagavan Shiva, having a danda on his arm. People mistakenly say and believe that Shiva's arm is tired, so he's resting. No. That danda is used to regulate breathing through pressure applied in the armpit. For example, if your right nostril is blocked, how do you open it? You can't force your breath. No, you can't do that. It's a very complex thing. So they use this yoga danda. It's called yoga danda. Apply on opposite side. Right nostril is blocked. You apply pressure on the left armpit. Keep it there for some time. When you observe, you will observe that the right nostril is open. Right? So to give that understanding, that's why you have the yoga danda. Shiva is resting. He's not resting the arm. It's for the yogic purpose. So now, having said all this, where does one begin? The practice of pranayama. As I told you, there are so many types of pranayama. Unfortunately, I wish I could teach you all those pranayama, but this, online mode, it will be very difficult, because asanas I can teach you, through the online mode. Stretching movements very easy, but pranayama, it's one-to-one basis. My teacher, Desikacharya, son of Mysore Krishnamacharya, as the asceta introduced, he used to, that tradition, the Krishnamacharya tradition, they always teach yoga one-on-one. One teacher, one student. Group class is only for children. For the adults, is only one-to-one. One student, one teacher. So the teacher, especially when teaching pranayama, he has to look at the student's, expression. How does this regulation of breath affect the student or the practitioner? So seeing all that, the teacher begins the practice. But then in this situation, how are we, all of us, I presume that all of us are interested in doing some little bit of practice, pranayama practice every day. Where do you begin? Simple. As I told you, get ready with the physical body, posture. You can even use the chair, sit with the back straight, don't lean, preferably back straight, make yourselves very, very comfortable. Takes few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes for the body to settle down, and you can move, stretch a little bit, make the body comfortable, stable, and then slowly begin the practice of pranayama. Where do you begin? Simple. I will make this practice very, very simple, because I'm not going to the actual practice of pranayama. Simple, to suit all of us. First thing, when your body is settled, quiet, comfortable, Close your eyes and simply begin by watching your breath. Observing your breath. Don't regulate, don't control, not as yet. There's no control, of course. Don't do anything. Simply as the breath moves in and out. It could be fast, it could be erratic. Maybe dominance is one side more than the other. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, simply watch. Just watch. In fact, this is the highest pranayama. In fact, the Buddhists call this vipassana. Simply be aware of the breath. Do nothing else. Be aware of the breath. Just watch the breath. You'll understand. If you do this, of course, it takes some time, not on the first day itself. You sit quietly, comfortably, start by watching your breath. And when you begin watching the breath, maybe after a few days, you're regular, every morning or whatever, you will find that the breath, you don't have to do anything. Naturally, it becomes slow, equal, steady, without you doing anything about it. So that's the first thing. Observe your breath. Become intimate with your breathing. And maybe take a few deep breaths if you feel like. And then, again, observation. When you observe your breath, observe how your abdominal muscles move. Your abdomen, not the chest. Abdomen. When you sit there, it's no straight back and all that, and you're watching the breath, watch it in the abdomen. Right? How does the abdomen move when I breathe in and breathe out? It's very, that's where you begin. Because until unless you establish all these parameters, there's no way we can actually begin the practice of pranayama. So when you observe the breath, find out how the stomach moves. When you breathe in, how does the abdomen move? When you breathe out, how the abdomen moves. You can easily find. If you're not able to observe that, keep one of your hand, right or left hand, over the abdomen gently and breathe. Then you can see the movement. Actually, you can feel the movement. Now, there also, right, that's the beginning. There are so many people who do wrong, what we call wrong breathing. Now, what is wrong breathing? When you breathe in, and if you find that your abdomen goes in, wrong breathing. I repeat again. When you breathe in, and when your abdomen, your stomach goes in, wrong breathing. Right? The opposite. When you breathe out, stomach is coming out, wrong breathing. Now, why is it wrong? Basic physiology, physical. When you breathe in, lungs are like balloon, expands. And there is a muscle which is dividing the thorax, chest, and the abdomen. Diaphragm. So when the lungs are expanding because you're breathing in, the diaphragm is pushed down to allow lungs to expand. As a result of that, your abdomen, if it is kept relaxed, it should come out, expand. Remember this simple thing. Breathing in, expansion. Not only the chest, but most important, your abdomen. And when you breathe out, contraction. Right? Contraction of the abdomen and the chest. This is the basic, the first step of pranayama. When you observe, this is how your breathing should happen. When I repeat again, to make it very, very clear. When you breathe in, expansion. Breathing out, contraction. I'm talking about the abdomen, right? If this, you're doing it correctly, you're doing the right breathing. You know, when many years ago, when I used to take yoga classes, in the college for the MBA students, for MTech students and public and so on, whenever I, even before I begin yoga, I ask them, all of them to sit in a posture and watch your breathing. And ask them to put their hand on the stomach and find out how the stomach moves. 99% of them do the wrong way. And so my first job, the first day, is to correct that. Now, suppose you're doing the breathing in the wrong way. You're breathing in, stomach goes in, you're breathing out, stomach comes out. Wrong breathing. How will you correct that? Simple. Every time you breathe out, take care that the stomach goes in. Simple. Right? Anytime you breathe out, see that the stomach goes in. That's all. And when you breathe in, naturally the stomach will come out. Expansion. So, 2 steps we have covered. Posture, Sthiram Sukhamasanam. Pranayama, before you begin the actual pranayama, establish whether the breathing is going on properly. Right? Through observation, through awareness, through watching. Now, coming to the actual practice of pranayama, where do you begin? Where do you and I begin? You know what we call in the yoga shastras, yogic breathing. What is yogic breathing? A complete inhalation, a complete exhalation. Right? Here comes a regulation of breath. You deliberately, consciously inhale as much as possible, maximum possible. Don't hold your breath. Breathe out as much as possible. Simple. From a normal, ordinary, easy breathing, we have just shifted the rhythm. Long breathing in, long breathing out. With the correct movement, right? Now, it depends on each person. Some may inhale for 6 seconds, breathe out for 8 seconds. Some people inhale just for 3 seconds because the lung capacity is only that much. Breathe out for as little as possible. So, depends. Whatever your capacity, inhale as much as possible. Exhale as much as possible. Sitting in that same comfortable, steady posture. You do this for about, depends on your time availability, your comfort level, your physical situation, so on. Maybe 6 times, 1 inhalation long, 1 exhalation long is 1 breath, 1 round, 1 time. Like that, 6 times you can begin with, and don't overdo in the beginning. Start with 6 times every morning. Next day, maybe I would suggest for a week. For 1 week, do this way. And then the second week onwards, you feel very nice, comfortable, right? You're confident. Maybe you can increase the number, make it 8 or 10, whatever, according to your comfort level, right? This is the first step, long inhalation, exhalation. One more I'm going to teach you for the day. I'm making it as simple as possible so that all of us can do it, at home in a comfortable way. I have my own YouTube channel called Satsang with Udayji. I'll share the link in the chat box, and I'll share it with Daseta and Dr. Sudhir and others. So if you go there to the channel, I have given about 6 or 7 videos on pranayama. How to do Kapalabhati, how to do Nadi Shuddhi pranayama, how to do mudra pranayama, all these, simple practices. I've done that in the YouTube. Watching that, you can comfortably do it at home, no problem, right? So I'll share the link later on. So one more, simple pranayama for today. What is called yogic breathing, mudra. There is another word, mudra pranayama. Mudra, symbol, gestures, mudra pranayama. So the second practice we told you, right? Long inhalation and exhalation, seated in a comfortable, stable posture. Now the same breathing, long inhalation and exhalation, do it with mudra, right? Mudras of the hand. 3 mudras I'm going to talk about today. I'll first show it to you and give you the name. As you can see, the tip of the index and the thumb just touching, right? Just touching. This is called Chin Mudra. C-H-I-N, Chin Mudra. There are hundreds of mudras. We will not go into, we are just taking only 3 mudras. Chin Mudra. Close the other 3 fingers into the palm. Chinmaya Mudra. The third one is thumbs inside, and over the thumb, close all the other 4 fingers. This is called Adi Mudra. I'll repeat again. Chin Mudra, Chinmaya Mudra, Adi Mudra. Now, how do you use these mudras? Sit in the comfortable, stable position. After watching your breath, correcting it, long, deep inhalation. Now, when you do that long, deep inhalation and exhalation, introduce these mudras. For example, take the first mudra, Chin Mudra. Keep it on your thighs, palms facing down. Okay? With this mudra, do the long inhalation and exhalation. Maybe about 6 times. Or make it begin with 3 times. Good enough. 3 long inhalations and exhalations in Chin Mudra. Go to the next one. Chinmaya Mudra. The same way, breathing in long, breathing out long, 3 times. After that, go to the third one, Adi Mudra. Keep it on the thigh, facing down. And similarly, do long inhalations, exhalations, 3 times. Good enough. This is called the basics of Mudra Pranayama. Mudra, symbol, gesture. Right? This is very good for beginners. So, as I told you, go slowly. The first week, maybe 3 times each mudra, good enough. Second week, if you're very confident, you feel good, nice, there is a joy in doing that, increase the number of times. Maybe instead of 3, make it 6 times each mudra. So totally, you'll do 18 long breaths, which is quite a long time for our standards. Right? So this way, you spend about approximately, depends on how slow or how fast is your breath, roughly about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes every morning. Good enough. And then after you do these, this pranayama, you finish this pranayama, don't just get up and go away. Relax for some time. Preferably, many of you know this, there is a famous posture in yoga called Shavasana. All of you know that, I'm sure, right? Lie down, put a mat or a jamakanam, lie down in Shavasana for a few minutes, and then gently get up. In fact, Shavasana is called the mother, the king of all asanas. Because if you know how to do Shavasana in the correct way properly, you have understood yoga. Because what is yoga ultimately? Stillness of the mind, silence of the mind, excellence in action. What is yoga in the real sense of the word? To know who you really are, to realize who you are, what is your connection with this universe. That's yoga. So all this, why are we doing all these things? Posture, watching your breath, regulating your breath, doing mudra pranayama, we are doing all, why? One, obviously, everybody knows, physically, as long as you and I live, our physical, emotional, mental health should be relatively good. Not, you don't have, there's no perfection there. Relatively good. Of course, all of us, Bhagavan Ramana used to say, the body itself is a disease. Body itself is karma. You can't, as long as you and I have taken a body, we have to go through the karma. There's no other way. So, relatively speaking, why are we doing all this? So that our physical, emotional, mental bodies are relatively healthy, quiet, calm, relatively. Right? Now, why all this? So that once you have done all these preparations, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now we shall begin yoga. Meaning, we have prepared, all this is preparation. For what? To look at yourself, to become self-aware, to observe yourself, to watch your thoughts, to observe what is going on. Who is this me? Me. Who is this? What is this? This is yoga. So all these asanas, all the hundreds of complex asanas, pranayama, all this is for self-realization. You can even use the word God realization. I will complete today's talk with this last point. Ashtanga Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. We have understood. Pratyahara. When all this is done, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, the body and mind and emotion, they're all stabilized. What happens? Pratyahara. The interest that you and I have in the world, let me use Adi Shankara's word, Maya. Maya is not illusion. Maya is measurement. The human ability to measure everything. That's Maya. So the attraction towards that lessons and lessons and lessons. It's indrawn. That's pratyahara. Dharana. Then comes attention of the mind, concentration, niruddha, the ability of the mind to become one-pointed, naturally, not through force. And if that also is done, then comes dhyanam. What is dhyanam? Dhyanam is not meditation, loosely translated as meditation. English dictionary. No, dhyanam is dhyanam. There is no translation at all. In fact, Bodhidharma, Buddha's great disciple, many years after Buddha left his body, Bodhidharma goes to China to spread Buddhism. Many of you know this story. He takes the word dhyanam also with him. And in Chinese, he tried to translate that in the Chinese language, failed, and the closest he came was Chan, C-H-A-N. So even today in Chinese language, dhyanam is called Chan. The same word traveled further east. Japan, it became Zen. And this understanding came to the Western world. They brought this word meditation. And if you look at a good dictionary, the word meditation, to think about something deeply, that's not it. What is dhyanam? It's not thinking. Ending of thinking. Chitta vritti nirodha. That's dhyanam. Patanjali gave the definition right at the beginning. That is yoga. That is dhyanam. Dhyanam silence of the mind. When that comes, the natural blossoming of samadhi. What is samadhi? Samadhi is not trance. Samadhi is the highest state the human mind can ever be. Consciousness, awareness, bodham, chaitanyam. You can use any other words. In fact, the great Sri Aurobindo, Pondicherry, the great Sri Aurobindo always said, samadhi, the 8th anga of yoga is the beginning of yoga, not the end. So all the others, starting from yama until dhyana, they're all preparation. Pranayama is one of them. Right? So, in a simple, practical sense, this is the understanding of pranayama. One last point, then I'll possibly invite some questions if you have. In the beginning, I use the word vipassana. One of the highest practice of pranayama, natural pranayama, is this. Simply sit in a comfortable, stable posture. Go on watching your breath, either in the nostrils or in your abdomen or in your chest, right? Whichever is comfortable, whichever suits you. So simply watch the breath. Go on watching the breath. You don't have to control, regulate anything. Just watch. And if you're lucky, grace is operating, you will discover you are not breathing. Breathing is happening in spite, despite you. And when you discover that, the beginning of yoga, that's where it begins. So, suppose all these mudra pranayama, all this is difficult for you. Every morning I have to do. If you feel that, simply sit in a posture every morning, evening, whatever. You can even sit in an easy chair. Close your eyes, make your body comfortable, relaxed, still, and begin watching your breath. Good. The best. Bhagavan Ramana used to say, just watch your breath. Good enough. Right? So, hope I've in my own little way, limited way, I hope I've made things a little clear. And thank you so much. If you have any questions, you're welcome.
So, Udayji.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Who's that?
My name is Krishnan.
Krishnan. Yes, sir. Tell me.
An amazing talk. We have to thank you. You cleared so much of the misconceptions. You took us back to fundamentals. You shared with us what Patanjali Yogi had to really talk about each one. It is amazing how well you connected up to say there are preparatory steps before we get on to pranayama. So a lot of things have been both clarified, misconceptions removed, and the preparatory aspects and those as how important they are before we start. You taught us a few very simple, I would say, pranayama exercises. You said vipassana plus the others. And then the mudra. My thing in all of that, you use the thing which you said, long breath.
Yes.
Long breathing in or long breathing out. Just want to know this cycle of a long breath.
Yes.
Is there some range which is it 15 seconds? Is it 20 seconds? Is it 10 seconds? Is there something which tells us, hey, this is a long breath,
right? And
we are in that direction.
Correct. Right. If you look at your normal breathing, you're sitting or standing, whatever you're doing, if you really watch your breath, it is very short. In fact, most of us, 95+% of us are shallow breathers, what we call shallow breathing. We employ only the chest, hardly anything. Our breathing doesn't touch the abdomen at all. Short breaths. So when I say long breathing, depends on your physical condition, your body constitution, your capacity, how well you have used your body, and all so many factors. And just stretch that normal, easy breathing a little more. Could be 3 seconds to some, could be 6 seconds to some people, could be 8 seconds inhalation to some people. So go according to your comfort level. Never look at the other person and say, my God, he's doing 8 seconds, let me also do. No, it doesn't work. It hurts you. So go by your capacity. How much can you breathe in? I would even add, even before you check up your breathing in, check up your breathing out capacity. How much comfortably can you breathe out? Maybe you can measure that, count. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So if your capacity to breathe out is, let's say, 4 seconds, your breathing in capacity should be at least 2 to 3 seconds. So if your breathing in is, let's say, 4 seconds, breathing out should be always longer than 4 seconds. Breathing out is always longer, should be longer than breathing in. So go according to your capacity, your comfort level, and do the long breathing. Don't worry about the seconds. Initially, the first week, just simply, without any measurement, simply do long breathing in, long breathing out, but slowly, steady movement and fully conscious. So go according to your comfort level. Am I clear, sir?
Thank you.